Thanks, everybody, for your interest in this topic. I don't know about you, but getting a denial is feeling like a gut punch after all the work I'm sure everybody's put in before some remote person decides to make a decision that is adverse to what you were anticipating. I feel a little like we're convening the United Nations here, but it is important because I appreciate we have an international audience, and some of the principles of what I'll talk about today are really around advocacy and you becoming a knowledgeable and helpful ally in the advocacy activity. Much of the talk will be about actually the state-level funding in the United States that we refer to as Medicaid. And part of the reason I focused on Medicaid is because it is a place where you can make local decision actions by using the decisions that you get from your state Medicaid decisions. So there's a proximity to the decision and the ability to change policy. I appreciate that it's very US-centric, and in fact, there are probably 50 different presentations of this, depending on which state that you work in. But I want to give a little bit of a framework. I was asked to disclose whether I had any conflicts of interest with every reviewer who denies me. So other than that, no, I have no conflicts of interest. As I said, we'll do a little bit of background around Medicaid as a U.S. government-backed insurance policy. The infamous small group activity, which will be interesting in this room, and then the impact that this activity can have at this, first of all, at the individual consumer level, which is obviously something that's very motivating and passionate to everybody in the room, but also at the state policy level. And Kara spoke this morning about positive change at a systems level. And that's the other thing I want to show is that you can show aggregate decision-making and bring it back and get a broader policy change. So, as I said earlier, responding to Medicaid decisions really do become a tool to impact the policy that's happening locally. And I'm sure many of you have experienced changes in your Medicaid program, whether it's direct personnel or they've moved to a managed care program, and the people that you are working with change all too frequently. Relationships are important, and starting off with, let me help you understand what complex rehab technology is a really good place to start. So start with a place of trying to get to mutual understanding. So some important background information. By federal regulation, managed care organizations that are in contract with your states to provide the managed care Medicaid program, they cannot be more restrictive than your state fee-for-service program. So it's really important, because I've had a Medicaid program tell me, well, we only follow the Medicare rules. Well, those are more restrictive than the Medicaid rules. So it's really important to start with a place of the private company that's providing the Medicaid benefit cannot be more restrictive. MCOs and Medicaid programs have a requirement to send their member appeal rights and how to appeal their decision as part of their routine program. It has to be in writing, the decision has to be in writing, and their appeal rights have to be in writing. And those are documents that you can ask for copies of. You can work with your client specifically. You can look at the time frames, what can be faxed in, what can be a telephone call, how do you get an appeal number. So read those documents. They're really complicated, particularly for a person who's on Medicaid, who's trying to figure out how to live their life every day between home care and their supplies and their transportation, and which care manager does this and who does that. So ask for a copy of the paper. It will help you guide you through the appeal process. As the clinician of record, and I feel really strongly, boy, I just dove in, didn't I? By the way, my name is Jean Minkel. I am a physical therapist. I work in the New York City area. We run a wheelchair clinic called On a Roll, and we've worked largely with the Medicaid population, although we have a large dual eligible population, meaning they have both Medicare and Medicaid. Some of our clients have private insurance as well. I am the clinician of record. I have made a recommendation based on my assessment, not only of the person and their function, but their environments of use, their trial of technology. I work really closely with a group of suppliers in the New York area. We are very much a team. We include the client in every decision as we go along. But it's my responsibility to write that letter of medical necessity. That's my role. And when that is what has an adverse determination, as the insurance companies so fancily call a denial, then it's up to me to defend what my decision was relative to the policy that they're using to deny it. So it's my voice, it's your knowledge, and it's really essential to partner with your consumers as you go through this process. So, I'm inviting you to travel in a foreign land. I'm going to share with you a roadmap, sometimes known as a process map, of how you can appeal these decisions as they come along. You can do it alone and kind of venture by yourself, or we in the Clinician Task Force, and myself in particular, offer you a guided tour. If you have an appeal and you're really questioning what was the validity of the appeal, of the denial, I'm happy to have you reach out. I'm happy to help you out and help to guide you. Some of that will happen today, and we will look at some of that process. So, no, I don't think you're going to read this as it's up on the screen right now. It is on the Clinician Task Force website, and it's also a handout attached to this session for the conference, so you can look through it. But I wanted to help you understand the steps as you go along. And the first line really puts the responsibility back on you as the prescribing or recommending clinician. Is the decision that was given consistent with the policy that the reviewer used? Well, how are you going to answer that? You're going to have to actually see the policy. So if you, in the Medicaid world, most states will post their durable medical orthotics prosthetics, a DME manual, and within that manual, you'll find something about the wheelchair or wheelchair and positioning or their mobility aids. It's worth going through and finding those policies, because that's in writing how the reviewer is making their decision. It's kind of the basis for which you can both discuss the merits of your submission. Then go back and read your own letter. Did you make a good case? Did you identify that this person met the criteria as it is defined in the policy? Now, everybody in this room wants people to be comfortable, have little pain, be as functionally independent as possible. Is that what the policy covers? Or does the policy say, does the person need an optimally configured manual wheelchair to negotiate their environment? Did you say why this chair was optimally configured and that a chair with a fixed axle wouldn't meet someone's needs? So the first review is really your own documentation. And it's really important, and I find myself, I'm sure some third grade teacher told you, you learn the most from your mistakes. Well, I learned a ton from writing very aspirational letters, like this is what it should be, but they weren't connected to the policies. So I had to go back and really learn to write the description. And by the way, there is a hierarchy. What is a lower cost option that would meet this person's need? Did you rule it out? You can't just go to the third option without telling them why option 1 and option 2 didn't work for this person. So be really specific. And I've been a reviewer myself. Do everybody a favor. Write a little paragraph that describes the person you're working with. They really want to know this person's different than the rest of this template where you're going to check the boxes and it could be any name at the top. Paint a picture. Tell about, Chaz was so cute here. I'm an activist. I'm a husband. I'm a father. A son. He looked like he was involved in some sports activities. Tell about this person, and it makes it much harder for the reviewer to say, well, I don't understand how this person's going to use this thing. Well, I just told you, they work 7 days a week. They take public transportation. They use an elevator to get in and out of their apartment. Those details are what are really important to the reviewer. And then you get to the big decision box. Is this a legitimate denial or not? And I'll be honest with you, I've pushed the envelope more than once. Like, I know this really isn't covered, but if I don't ask, then they don't know that this person has a need. And sometimes my ask is good enough that I get back what they call individual consideration. Now, this doesn't really meet our policy, but this is a unique situation and will allow payment. That's a win. Awesome. But if you didn't ever ask, you're not going to get that win. Sometimes it's, we tried and we got denied, and there really isn't grounds for me because the policy's pretty clear. So that's a legitimate denial. It really isn't worth going through the appeal process. And then there are times that there are just ridiculous reasons given for why somebody was denied, and then I'm going to appeal. And I'm going to go for an internal appeal, and if I need to, I'm going to go to a fair hearing appeal, and I'm going to aggregate these appeals as we go along the process. The rest is really some of the details about, in that initial letter about the appeal rights, is the first one an internal appeal. There's an opportunity for peer-to-peer. And that often people equate that to, oh, it must be a physician to a physician. I'm the requesting therapist. I have assistive technology professional after my name. I did all of the assessment. If the person I'm appealing to has no idea what complex rehab is, I'm going to say, A, do you have a peer that knows about this type of equipment? Or can we take some time so I can educate you as to what the options are? I appreciate you don't do these kind of appeals all the time, these kind of reviews all the time, but this is essential equipment for the person we're working with. So, here comes the experiment in adult learning. I have about 5 cases. I have multiple original letters that were put together and the decision. So I need you guys to kind of organize into about 15 groups, if you can self-organize. So as I'm getting the papers together and you're getting yourselves together, essentially what I have here, I have a letter, and if you read through the letter, there's then an insurance decision attached to it, the first decision, and it will have the reason why the request was denied. Now, I have, as I said, I have 5 case studies. I have about 3 copies of the letter and the decision. So if you can self-organize, that would be great. You can be a leader of a group over here. You guys stay there, and you can go to the back. That would be awesome. Actually, you know what? If you stay there with him.
I'm over there, though.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. You go over there.
We're back middle as well.
Back middle, together with her, near her? No.
We're in the middle. She's the left.
Okay, there we go. Are you guys up here?
No, I've got a middle.
Middle.
Thank you.
I'm in the back right.
Back right.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm our appointed person, so I
Oh.
haven't been up here.
You haven't been up here. There we go. Are you in the back over there? Okay.
I have a different back middle.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Can you get a group of people together? Is there any group that doesn't have a case study? All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, we do.
You do? Okay. Any group not have a case study? Oh, you're really good self-organizers. I am impressed. Even separating chairs. Very good. All right. We'll give you about 10 minutes. Maybe somebody can. There you go. Which number do you have? Oh, never mind. Okay. Oh, I have a whole case here.
Give a synopsis.
I was gonna say, yeah, just kind of read it.
Yeah.
How's that? Thank you.
Actually, if you guys, I have an extra one.
Oh, great.
Here.
Okay.
If you 3 want to go
Perfect.
together.
Okay.
Do you want to join them?
Okay.
Do you have a big group? You guys can just be a smaller group.
We getting our own?
You can be, yep.
Okay.
And anybody else have a big group? I have a smaller group here. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, go ahead. No, you guys are good. So, folks, we have a bit of a time constraint here, so I just want to be sure, has everybody had a chance to read the letter and then the denial reason? Okay, see if you can get to the denial reason in the next 2 or 3 minutes so we can then have a report out. All right, groups, let's start to, you can ideally stay in your group there. But if we can start the report out. So, thank you to each of the readers in the group. That was a monumental task trying to get through those letters. So we are going to do a little report out, and a couple of groups had the same case. So we're going to start up in the front corner of the letter. There was an initial, and I want to see the groups that had NB at the top. All right. We got 2 NBs there. All right. So the first group right here, can you tell us what was asked for? And, oh, actually, can you see if that mic's, there we go, perfect. Is that working? Yeah. Okay. If you could use the mic just so everybody could hear you. Oh, it's not working. Sorry. No. Okay. Never mind. Go ahead. No, that's all right. Go ahead. You just do it. I'll repeat it for people.
I'll try to project. NB is an older gentleman with Parkinson's who has a current Power 3 power chair that's 12 years old.
Okay. It's so actually just what was asked for.
Oh, it was,
So
they were asking for a new power chair with seat elevation as one of the components.
So a power chair with a seat elevator for a gentleman who had Parkinson's and actually had polio as well. So
That's right,
post-polio and Parkinson's.
all of the wheelchair was approved except the seat elevator. Because
So the power chair was approved except the seat elevator.
because it was shown that he needed it for transfers with the assistance of an aide.
So that the use of the seat elevator, which by the way he had one, was using, was really in assistance with the aid.
And the denial was based on the fact that the seat elevator would not make him more independent. He would still need the aid to assist with transfers.
So the policy says, and the criteria that was used was, seat elevation is used if it allows the person to transfer independently. That was the criteria. So was it a legitimate denial?
Yes, but we thought we could look back and see if the seat elevator might help him in other aspects of his home to reach the counter or cabinets and maybe resubmit with a different reason.
Awesome. So initial denial was actually legitimate given the criteria of it's supposed to be. The second piece of the criteria in New York is, does a seat elevator allow somebody access, oh, thanks so much, to be involved in ADLs by virtue of not having to move stuff out of cabinets, et cetera, et cetera. His challenge really was he didn't really have much upper extremity function. It is, I will tell you, a case that we did appeal on the basis of, we were very specific, where the aid could transfer him was in public toilet facilities.
But that was
We
listed
still
in
got
here.
denied, but
That was
no,
listed, and
that-
they still denied.
and they still denied it. So, but I just want to point out, like, let people know what the real needs are, and it's still a real need. So, thank you very much. Did the other group have more to add? A different outcome, different next steps? Sure. Good.
Oh, you get this. And now you can pass it.
Okay. I was just curious, you know, I know sometimes in the past I have gone back and said, okay, yes, they are still needing assistance with this transfer, but without the seat elevator, they're dependent. With the seat elevator, maybe they're min-assist or something like that, you know? So I know typically things don't get paid for caregivers, but I have on occasion, gone back and described that and had luck and gotten that paid for because, you know, of course, worrying about what might happen to the caregiver performing that lift, and then this person is left without any assistance.
Exactly.
So just curious if you've had any experience with that and if you could speak to
Oh,
that at all.
absolutely. So the comment was, actually, I'm afraid the mics are
sorry.
going to yell at each other. The comment was clearly in this case, and in many cases, particularly that feature of the seat elevator, it reduces the amount of assistance. It makes giving the assistance easier. Is the convenience of the assistant part of the criteria? And the woman asking said she's made that claim, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Yes, exactly the same. We work with a fairly large number of people that use consumer-directed personal care services, so they have really long-term relationships with their personal care assistants, and people who have aging caregivers. So if you can demonstrate, you know, reduction in back issues, ease of, and the ability for the person to continue in their own lifestyle. So it's not 100%, but it's always worth, and those are the personal things, individual consideration. All right, next case is RAV. Is there a group that had RAV? Yes, all right. And does my man with the mic come around? There we go. And again, what was asked for? And did you have enough information?
I think we had plenty of information. They were asking for a Group 3 power chair with tilt, recline, and power legs. It was denied because of some of his abilities inside the home with transferring and using a rollator. And he has a caregiver for 10 hours a day during the week and 8 hours a day during the weekend. So they basically denied this from the standpoint as they have caregiver assistance, which doesn't put them in a least restrictive environment because they're not independent of the community and they're basing it off of their home use, which is a criteria that's Medicare-based, not Medicaid-based.
Exactly. Bingo. So in the spirit of time, this was a denial of a Medicaid recipient of a Group 3 chair because it was being used in the community. And the denial reason was, this is being used in the community. And it's like, right, because it's a Medicaid benefit. And they said, no, 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 you have to use it in the home as well. No, so we went to fair hearing on that one, and actually won, but we'll add it to the case. Thank you. Excellent picking up the detail there. Is it RV or no, that's okay, go ahead. What letters do you have?
All right, we have, can I use the mic?
Yes,
Thanks. We had HS, post-polio
okay.
syndrome. And what was asked for was a power chair with tilt, recline, leg elevate, and seat elevation. We found that the letter didn't have really quite enough information. She is already using a chair with seat elevate, and the assessment didn't specify if or how that seat elevate was making her independent with her slide over transfers and independent with her oral, facial, upper body self-care. It just said that she was, and we think perhaps since she doesn't have the reach, that if we take away the seat elevation, we're going to take away that function, but that's not clear in the letter.
You guys are so good. Insufficient information. Oh, a really good place to go back and read your own letter and say, oh, I was a little glossy on that. Particularly if somebody's already using the device. It's like, well, tell me how you use it. And more importantly, if you don't get it, what's going to be compromised? What won't you be able to do? And that really, again, helps you paint the picture. That was HS. So do we have a MP?
So MP is a 40-year-old.
If you can grab the...
Spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. She currently is in a chair, a Rovi, with all seat functions. That's all it says. So we are assuming that it's tilt, recline, legs, and elevate. But that's all. It just says all seat functions, right?
Insufficient. Go
That
ahead.
is insufficient. And we're a little confused in the denial because in some places it says the whole chair's denied, and then in other places it says just the elevator is denied.
Welcome to an incomplete letter.
Right.
It's from the.
So it literally says in two different places that the chair's denied, and then it says because the seat, you also need a lot of help with self-care activities. It's not reported that you no longer need help with the use of this power seat lift. This determination was based on blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So I'll look a little bit further, but it was a really confusing denial letter.
It's very confusing. We were like, what are they denying?
Are you
they
denying the whole chair,
just
or are
the
you just
elevator?
denying the elevator?
And if the old chair did really have all the seat functions,
It's-
they've already given it to her.
It
She's
was a
40
different-
years old.
It was a different payer. Yeah, the infamous different payer, yes. That was NP, and do we have an RA in the room? Or, yes, great.
So RA is a T10 power with history of skin breakdown in a K5, and they were asking for a replacement K5 and seating. The chair and some of the accessories were approved. Side guards and impact guards were denied as just not medical items. They also asked for a smart drive. It was denied per LCD requirement. And a matrix back was denied, not meeting criteria, only meeting criteria for general use.
But what was the reason that the smart drive was denied?
It just says denied is not medically necessary per LCD requirement.
Oh, this is your Medicare denial.
Yes, it's a Medicare.
Yep. The next page is the
Oh, we
Medicaid
didn't
denial.
even-
That's okay, because it's just so good I have to share it with people. So, getting this notice, you were denied. To approve this item, it's covered. The very last page, thank you. Oh, it is the very last page. Basically, what they were saying is you didn't demonstrate that you can't push a manual chair. It's like, right. So this came down to the reviewer had no idea what power assist was, and honestly thought that you only got a power assist if you couldn't push a manual chair. So it was accurately denied, if you will, from Medicare because it was being used in the community. But in Medicaid, the reviewer had no idea what a power assist was. He said, you didn't demonstrate that you're not able to propel a manual chair. You do propel a manual chair with a power assist. Thank you. All right. In the spirit, so first of all, thank you everybody for being so participatory, and you can see how your letters can so influence the reviewer's decisions. I also want to share with you, your conclusions were great. We had an appropriate denial, a community use, insufficient information, the seat elevator wasn't needed, power assist can't push a manual chair. So all different reasons, some legitimate, some not. And what we did was we collected all of these, and we appealed every single one of them. And those that we needed to, we went to a fair hearing. I'm going to go back up on the stage to make it easier for the AV guy. And then we did something really important. And we reached out to our advocates in the disability community to join us so that it wasn't just the clinicians and the suppliers that were complaining that the decisions weren't going our way. And we brought together a group in our local area called the Civics League for Disability Rights. You could reach out to an independent living center, you could reach out to an ADAPT unit, you could reach out to your own peer-to-peer support group, but I really encourage you to reach out to consumers in your community. And my two colleagues here, Marcus Johnson and Sharifa Abdahami, have been incredible allies. And with their voice, we went to the Department of Health, who is ultimately the overseer of managed care and the Medicaid benefit. And they brought these 30 denials, as you can see, all over the place in terms of, we brought the denials that we didn't think were appropriate denials. And it took many Zoom phone calls, and it took a lot of pushing, but we finally got the Department of Health to put in writing a change in the durable medical guidelines that now applies to all of the state Medicaid managed care programs. And specifically, it says these changes will alter the current wording of home and community to home and or community. And I'll tell you, thank you. So I was sharing this story with a colleague, and she said, seems like a lot of work for 3 keystrokes, /or. But you know what that /or means? A whole bunch of people, particularly in New York City, who live in very small homes, apartments, who use an alternative mobility device in the home, now have an appropriate mobility device for their routine, normal, in this case, urban environments. So people use a walker in their home and a scooter to go to the bus. The gentleman with cerebral palsy had a walker. They had denied him the power chair. He had already fallen, broken his glasses, and had, because the device that was perfectly fine in his home was completely inappropriate in the community. I bring this up, and someone with another group said, Medicaid, by federal statute, covers community. Medicaid is fundamentally different than Medicare. It includes full integration in the least restrictive setting. So do not let somebody tell you that we're following the infamous in the home rule. Under Medicaid, it's inclusive of the community, and the policy cannot be restrictive. I'm working with United Spinal, and we're pulling together denial stories as written by people who are experiencing the denial, And I feel very proud of myself to create the QR code there. So you can flash on the QR code. It will bring you to a little storyboard, and the storyboard will guide the person through telling us their story. It includes what is it that they wanted. I have to tell you, it includes where did they get the denial? Did the supplier or therapist tell them they didn't qualify? Did they actually get a written letter? And this is my beseech to you as professionals. It is incredibly important for us to advocate, and that first advocating is write the letter of need, even if you think it's going to be denied. Because what's happening is we're not getting asked for that item, therefore it must not be needed. If you don't ask, they won't deny it. And then when you get the denial, if it's a legitimate denial, it's a legitimate denial. If it's a crazy denial, like you have to push a chair, you can't push a power manual chair if you need a power assist, it gives you the opportunity to find out what's the knowledge base behind the person that you're working with, and starts to build. I'll also tell you that out of our work, not only did we get the state policy changed, we got our biggest managed care company to actually draft specific policy about community use. We actually have a policy for backup chairs, and this is all coming from the community saying, this mobility is my right. This is how I negotiate my world. If I live in the community, I have to be able to get around the community. So partner with your advocates. Really, they are so powerful. I could tell you the bureaucrat looks at somebody in a power chair, and my two friends, Marcus uses a sip and puff chair, about the thickest ride cushion I've ever seen because his butt is so friggin' bony. And Sharifa is just a beautifully articulate woman. And people walk in and see these two very, very articulate people, and it's really hard for them to say, no, you don't need that. But they could look at me all the time and say, your people don't need that. It's really hard to look at the advocates right in the eyes. So I think the lights are up as much as they can be, but I would love to, yes, open the floor for questions.
So one of the things that's happening at the moment.
Did I take the mic? Wait a minute. That's how you dominate the conversation. You see, you hold all the mics.
One of the things in Michigan that's happening at the moment is the MCOs are turning the community access against us. So they don't pay for ramps to help people in and out of their house, but we're having people denied wheelchairs for in-home use because they don't have a ramp on their house, and therefore they can't get to all environments. So that's one of the battles that I'm fighting right now. I've had a couple of them overturned after appeals and fair hearings, but that's one of the things is that community piece, as much as it's great. At the moment, our MCOs are going, oh, well, it has to be used in all environments, and probably the most drastic of that is like we had someone who was a newly injured patient with quadriplegia who was at home with a loaner wheelchair, and her Medicaid HMO denied her power chair because she didn't have a ramp to get it in and out of her home. And this is, so I feel like sometimes the MCOs will come up with, I also had another MCO deny someone K5 because they had 5 out of 5 arm strength and they could propel a heavier wheelchair. So it's one of those things that's like—
Optimally configured.
Yes, and that was in there a lot.
Okay. So just let me go back to the access issue with regard to the ramp. Number one, I would definitely involve my independent living center, and clearly, the policy should not be resulting in the person being trapped in their home. So let's just start at a human level. I would also, if at all possible, can we get funding separate maybe from the Medicaid program for the ramp, so then we take that denial reason away from them. So I do a lot of home care. I don't know if any of you have done home care. People have really beautiful entertainment systems. I don't think we ask people enough, what are your resources? What are your alternatives? Can we get some funding to eliminate this denial reason? We can get a portable ramp, even if it's portable, just so you take that reason off particularly for somebody with quadriplegia who should be able to go in and out of their home. And just fight it. It is inhumane. And I've used that kind of language. Like, are you trapped to your house? And COVID was kind of helpful to people. Like, hey, remember in March of 2020 when you couldn't leave your house? How much did you want to get out? Well, that's what people with mobility disabilities want as well. Just hold on for the mic here for a sec. Thank you.
They have the same rule. You have to have access into your home for a power chair, because then we would sometimes go back and say, oh, the power chair has to stay at school, so they still need a manual chair. They didn't really like that, right? But there was, I think, a big push in Pennsylvania. I think it was like more legislatively driven, that now Medicaid does pay for ramps and does pay for overhead lifts and does pay for stair glides. Just came down within the last like 18 months or something. It's changed the life
there
of
is
some
a
of the
federal
kids.
program called CFCO, Community First Choice Option, but the state has to put money behind it as well. So that's why I always say, go back to your independent living centers and really find out if there are different pools of money available for people.
And does every managed care have to follow the same rules? Like, we're getting denials, but we have, in Pennsylvania, we have these waiver programs, and they're called community health choice waivers, and there's 3 of them, and one of them is now saying things like, oh, you only can get a group 2 chair with certain diagnoses, but then the other 2 are given those group 3 chairs.
So basically, I mean, this is also a state-to-state thing, but essentially, there's a floor, which was, what is your state Medicaid policy? Managed care companies can go above it, but they can't go below it. And so the key is knowing what the foundation policy is.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? There's great, way over. Far over, keep going. Nope. Yes?
Their face at these meetings. Put photos in your documentation. We put lots of photos in the documentation.
Can you just bring the mic up closer so everyone can hear you?
I'm really loud, so I didn't
That's
want to
okay.
scare everybody. Put photos in your documentation. I think you're building a story, but then if you show them that photo too, it makes it a little more personal, and then they can see how disabled they are or whatever they need, what they look like. So that's helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get the consent for the photo, and then put the photo in. I think there's a bunch of questions over here.
Well, I was just going to say, I know in Florida Medicaid will not allow you to submit photos. They say it creates
Okay.
bias. Isn't that crazy? Yes. Yeah, it's insane.
It's
But
because people might feel like
Yeah.
they could see somebody
exactly.
anyway.
But yes, we always encourage that as well, videos and photos. But I was just going to add on to a point you said earlier, Jean, about alternative funding. I think it's something we don't talk enough about. We make a lot of assumptions as clinicians about what people can and can't afford. And I've been, I learned the hard way myself. I had a client who, I knew kind of their situation, but he had a wealthy aunt who was like, I'll pay for anything you need for your wheelchair, So just have those conversations.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to mention, if I can, we do have an alternative funding document on our website that has state by state, and then there's some general alternative funding as well, and that's at permabill.com if anyone's interested in some alternative
Terrific.
funding. Yeah.
Yes. Never assume someone's resource level.
I have a question about the denial letters, because the one sample that we had was the most inclusive explanation of why something was denied that I've ever seen.
Oh,
And
right.
honestly, I usually get something back that says, this item is not medically necessary. If it becomes medically necessary in the future, you can do this. And we're talking about, I mean, a range of wheelchair safety bed standards. Pennsylvania, if anyone's gotten a standard approved in the last 2 years, I'd love to know that because they've been flat out denied across the board for us. So, yeah, and really no explanation. And sometimes you didn't consider these other items which are in the letter, you know, so, yeah.
So I would encourage you, go back to your Medicaid policy and see if the item that was denied because not medically necessary actually has coverage criteria. And then I would write the appeal to say, per current policy, the person qualifies because of criteria 1, 2, and 3. So give them their policy back and see if your second determination, and kind of a global appeal. This was really specific about Medicaid, but generally, many insurances have a philosophy of we'll deny them and see if they really want it. So appeal, unless you really, like, I knew NB was pretty marginal, but we went back for the appeal anyway. But appeal when you get particularly a private insurance denial, because 90% of the time it's well, let's see if we can save these costs. And if you're willing to fight for it, then we'll approve it on the second appeal or second review. There's one over here and one over here and one in the back. Actually, if you want to just start with your question, and the other folks, if you just want to come over to this aisle, that might make it a little faster. We have about 3 minutes.
Okay, so I don't come from the physical therapy or ATP world. I'm actually a researcher. And so I apologize that this is a basic question.
No.
But are there any considerations or any justifications for prophylactic care in Medicare or Medicaid where you can say, hey, someone had a labral tear or they had a GH, it was a disarticulation, or they have dislocated their joint, so they would like a power assist device so they don't do that again, but they don't want a power wheelchair because that's less independence.
Unfortunately, in the U.S. healthcare system,
Message received.
it is not. So this medical necessity term is really narrowly defined, that you have, it's in treatment of, but prevention of really isn't there. And the real hope of managed care was that people would look at cost holistically. That hasn't borne out. But it doesn't mean that we, again, given the evidence we have now, and when I was educated, you use it or you lose it. Well, what evidence has shown us, particularly in aging with a disability, is conserve to preserve. And that's how we have to write the letter, to say current practice says, in protection of the upper extremity, this power assist is needed for preservation of the joint. Put it in the letter and let them come back and say it's not currently medically necessary. But to somebody's point, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's important for us to profess what current research evidence practice has shown us, and not write just to the policy, but to write to our practice.
I wasn't in line, but I just really want to piggyback off of that, because if, I hate to say it, but if there can be a diagnosis code, at least on the past medical history, and that's in their agenda, we have had a lot of success using those to justify.
Oh, if it was a past medical incurrence, I completely agree.
Right.
When he was referencing prophylactically,
Yeah.
That's a little harder to get through. But
Okay, I just wanted to be,
yes, you're absolutely right. And I think, there we go, perfect.
So it's clear enough when you get a not medically necessary that you can go to your state's definition of medical necessity, and then you can pick apart, whether or not that's adequate. But I've been getting denials saying a non-covered item when it is not, in fact, not in the policy. So when I
Okay.
see
Wait a minute, I have a
non-covered
double
item.
negative going in my head.
Yeah, so when I see non-covered item, I think, oh, I should give up because this item is not in the policy. But actually what it's meaning is that we don't believe you've proved to us that it's medically necessary. Is that a problem that anybody else is?
Wow.
They're
okay.
misspeaking. They're saying it's a non-covered item, and then if you call customer service and say, I'm confused, this seems like it would be in the policy, they say, oh, yes, it's in the policy.
Then I would treat it as they are denying you an item that is in their coverage policy. Appeal that denial. To me, non-covered is the bathroom chart, the bath seat that is clearly, and many policies will say what's clearly not covered.
I'm curious if you have any strategies for when I feel like most of our denials are, hey, you have not ruled out lesser items, you have, et cetera, but those things are clearly in our evaluations, wink, wink, smile. And so I'm curious if you have any strategies for how you've either laid out your like to make things clear. I feel like everything we do is bullet pointed and fairly clear, and most of our letters are read it. But I'm just, I don't know. I'm newer in the field, and so I'm curious, like, how on earth do you get people to actually read what you write?
Well,
I know that's probably a dumb question,
no,
but I just don't
not
know.
at all. And I got to tell you, we could poll probably half the people in this room, and it's like, oh, there should be a form, it should be a narrative, it should be. I will tell you, when I've spoken to the reviewers in particular, what they really want to know is they want to see a picture of the person. So even if you have a form, if you can put 2 or 3 paragraphs up front that describes this person in such a way that you can't slap somebody else's name on the beginning of it. Describe the person, not the diagnosis, not their function. Find something fun about the person and put that up front. So you start to define the person. And then my experience is when you know something is not the least costly alternative, you literally say, we tried X, Y, and Z, which could have been a lower cost alternative, but it didn't meet the needs for the following reason. Because in this person's brain, they're going through and they're going, oh, there's a cheaper option for that. And if you didn't right there rule it out for them, that's going to be their reason for sending it back to you. I will tell you, we are about to embark on a new program because we're getting the infamous missing information letters that are right in the body of the letter. But this is a place, again, where we want to collate information. Is it one reviewer in one office that is cheating on the reading? Or is somebody been given a kind of an organizational guidance of keep delaying, keep delaying, keep delaying, and then their denial reason is we didn't get the information back. It's not that they have to make a clinical decision. So write a good narrative up the front would be my first. And then when you know it's not the least costly alternative, call it out.
Okay, so going back to we keep talking about if it's in the policy, it's non-covered, oh well, but I'm reading the document that we got years ago that it's a final rule, register, CMS, effectively July 1, 2016, that I don't know that has been overturned. And basically, it says, the rule also codifies that the states must have a list may have a list pre-approved medical equipment and suppliers for administrative ease, but must not have an absolute limit on coverage. States must provide and make available to individuals a reasonable and meaningful procedure for beneficiaries to request medical equipment and supplies not on the pre-approved list. And then it goes on and on and on.
Right.
So it's like, it sounds, and that's, I've used this many times. I even put it in my evaluation so that, because.
So that's basically the language that's giving you the individual consideration. Like, I appreciate that this person's needs isn't covered in your general policy, and therefore I'm asking you kind of for an exception. And I think I have read policies, though, that say, X product is not covered. Then I think you have to start off with, while your policy says this isn't covered, under this circumstance, would you consider it?
Right.
But be upfront.